and welcome to Conversations with Tony Mobley. Today's guest is Greetings and welcome to Conversation with Tony Mobley. Today's guest is a very familiar one. He has been on before and he's talked about AI. He is a web designer and an AI guru. He does multimedia. And today, he's going to be talking about truth behind the news. That's right, Mr. Ken Jordan. He's going to be with us today, and we are asking you to ask your questions. This is a great opportunity for a person who has been behind the scenes with the way in which news is produced. This is episode 22 of 2025 of Conversations with Tony Mobley. And we are powered by Boinks Software and Mimo Live. This is a Mimo Live production. I want to thank the team behind Conversation with Tony Mobley. You can watch Conversation with Tony Mobley on our YouTube channel. There, inside the YouTube chat, you will see a link to Makana. In that link, you can ask your question of Ken today, and those questions can be voted up and down so that they are priority based on their vote. If you choose not to use Makana, well, you can ask your question in the YouTube chat. We thank you so much for tuning in today, and we hope that you find this conversation meaningful. And now we're going to get started right away with our conversation today with Ken Jordan. And we asked this question, and I'm preface this, we asked this question for those who have not had the opportunity to hear from Ken Jordan. So the question is, who is Mr. Ken Jordan?
Hi, Tony. Thanks again for having me on your show. We must count up and see how many times it's been. It's been quite a large number.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
uh, this time, though, I'm on a slightly different capacity. This is more from my previous work, where I used to run new media uh, companies in what worked for large media organizations, and also I used to work at uh, UK's largest news organisation, Associated New Media, who were a parent company of one of the biggest newspapers. And I ran their digital department. So who I am, I've been in new media design for 41 years. So I started way back when in Arthur Anderson was my first job, running their computer graphics department, which was computers then were 320 by 200 with four colors from a palette of eight. So it's quite limited what you could do with computer graphics back then, but that's where I started, and I've been in the industry in design and new media and advertising for large corporates and global companies. And yeah, today is going to be talking about my previous life and in running digital departments who were producing adverts and content, as well as working in a news organization. And yeah, how the news is actually made. It hasn't changed. Hadn't changed before I did it. It's been the same. It's still the same now. It's just even more advanced because of the new tools that we have.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. Again, we want to ask our audience, this is a great opportunity to find out what the behind the scenes are. So please ask your questions. The next question is, how did you get started in news media?
Um, I was working in um, traditional media, we were producing for producing uh, commercials and adverts for large corporates, um, Disney, Levi's, companies like that, where we were marketing and doing marketing for their for Bonavista, which is an arm where they were producing movies, and we would produce movies, adverts, and commercials for those to encourage people to go and see those movies. And then, and it's only looking back at my working past when I recognized, because I was the longest I was in any organization was the first one, Arthur Anderson. I was there for almost over 3 years. Everywhere else was about a year or 2 years, 18 months. And I only recognize much later that that's down to my ADHD in terms of getting bored really quickly, but finding, and then wanting to move on, doing something new. Um, but one of those organizations I worked for was Associated New Media, and ran their digital department, and we made a number of websites, quite large ones well known in the UK, and but it was there that had access to journalists who were writing for the digital press, and recognizing that what was actually the politics of what was actually being produced was very different to the politics of the people actually writing those pieces. Um, you kind of they're it's almost the more polarizing the pieces are that are written, the people that can write those the best are the ones with the exact opposite field points of view to those pieces,
Wow.
because they know how to write to trigger, to get people to react. And they don't, it's well, that's what I found when where I was working, when we were working, and seeing those producers. They were some of the kindest, gentlest folk, but the stories that they were able to generate and write was stuff that really quite triggering. But and on the opposite side of their political beliefs, but they were really good at writing those pieces. And yeah, and a big thing that you see when behind the scenes is they don't write the headlines. The headline writers are some of the highest paid. Their job is to write a headline that will encourage you to, click and read or buy the paper. Their job is to what's called clickbait. To encourage you to stop you, especially with now, to stop, see that headline and to grab that piece. So often the headlines are quite, as I said, very different sometimes to the actual piece that might have been written, because they were literally designed to stop you in your tracks, to make you, to get your attention, to then read the following piece. So yeah, it was very different person that would write those pieces to the actual journalist, and a lot of times they would be quite upset with what the headline was, but they don't choose. That's the choice from the editor would make that choice, but that's just the way that it is. So you might see, the byline, and this piece was written by the journalist. Yes, they did write that, but they didn't write the headline. So
Wow.
yeah, so but also the biggest, I suppose, thing that is more to reveal is that producing quality news is very expensive, very expensive. It is not a profit center. So therefore, um, the other avenues of revenue are from the advertisers. Um, Actually, it's almost 70% of news is dependent upon advertisers. What that means is you the stories or pieces are written not to you know to, to put in a bad light the advertisers. So advertisers have a massive influence. As I said, almost 70% of news is has a direct influence from the advertisers. So independence isn't really there in majority of the news pieces that you read. Um, yeah,
Wow.
it's
That that sort of speaks to the next question that we have. Clyde Lopez Waterman, Brevard, North Carolina asks, can we move to a world where ads are not what pay for the news and other content?
um, only if you want to get rid of three-quarters of the news organizations. The 90% of news organizations are owned by six corporates. Um, and as I said, I think it's actually the numbers are like 69% of that news is paid for by advertisers. 54% of news is actually from PR, from direct PR pieces. The only way that change could happen is if you know the, those news organizations just didn't exist. It's just the way that it is now. That there is, as I said, one of the latest studies was something like in the UK in the British press, 80% of stories weren't original. They came from only actually 12% of the stories were actually written by a journalist. The rest is PR. It's called journalism almost. It's where,
Wow.
because they're so underfunded, and because generating good news and getting independent news is so expensive, they take verbatim PR releases. We used to make them. We used to create a PR piece from the companies that we were working for, and those would be printed verbatim by the newspapers. So where you would think, oh wow, this is a nice independent piece written. I think it isn't. It's coming directly from PR because they're understaffed, underfunded, and it doesn't make money. It is so expensive. So a lot of these organizations are either just trophy pieces for the six corporates that are there for them, but they're just advertising engines or pumping out PR releases from a company. So um, that's just the unfortunate truth of how that is made now. But yeah, so it is vitally important that as I said, take everything you read with a pinch of salt, especially if that headline has triggered you in some way, whether
Okay.
positive or negative. Those are those are 90 odd percent more likely to be just designed to that the or what one way we're saying it's kind of alternative facts that are in those pieces. They're designed to trigger you, to get you to react, because then you will do some action or read it, or it's almost that's why any of those kind of headlines that you see that do gather the news, they do gain that traction, is to is so that they can sell more of that. Could obviously sell more adverts around it, um, because it's so. And there are a few kind of key triggers, especially now. It's almost like any negative story. If you put it about Apple in the headline, you're going to get 10, 20, 35% increase in the uptake. Um, Big trigger now is AI. You know, if you use or write a negative piece about AI, you're going to get a big uptake because people are those are people have an opinion, what positive or negative on those, and that's why those pieces are written. And as I said, 95% of what's written in a lot of those stories are kind of alternative facts. It's just a way to. Unfortunately, now it is, as I said, the um, um, advertising runs it. So it's all about the views, and because more people that view it, then more people that can then view your adverts.
Wow. Clarlock is back again, and he asked another question. Was there a time when the news was actually informational or never?
There never was really. Back in the day, even before my time working there, they said there many, but back in the 2000s, that's 20 or 25 years ago. Way before then, again, the um, news then was written by the owners of those newspapers were, it was their point of views that's why they could afford, the the uber rich who could afford to, you know, who could afford to put money into those news organizations, because I said they're not profit centers. They don't directly make money from it. They were then used as just basically mouthpieces, so they were always tainted towards the ownership of those pieces, because they didn't want, obviously, if they're putting all these multi-millions into this news organization to they were used as a mouthpiece. So whatever political views they had, or whatever um, influences they wanted for their business concerns, those would be in those pieces and manipulated to benefit them. Um, the benefit that we're seeing, well, I shouldn't say a benefit. You you can today find more real news because there's more of a level playing field. Anyone can write a blog or go have a YouTube channel and produce their pieces. The only problem is now there is so much noise out there to filter that through. That's what you have to now do. You have to filter out what is um, you know
That
real
sort of brings us
to what is that.
to our next question. How should we manage our consumption of media?
Um, well, what's actually interesting is for me, who's been in this field, still am it for a small extent, but um, the way I manage it is by not having it. I don't have, um, obviously I don't buy newspapers, hardly watch the news, mainly because I suppose because I know how it's made. Um, and I would encourage you to be more thinking about, creating media rather than consuming. Um, it's funny here. We've just moved into this lovely new house that we've just got here in Ireland, and we're going to build have a cinema room. Um, but actually, our consumption of TV is just diminished and diminished, because we're spending more time being outside nature or creating media ourselves. So that's what I would encourage, because it's not, it's, or um, you have to, you know, so when a big news piece comes out, you 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 must have to look at multiple sources, um, whether it's one side or the other. You need to take them all in, because it's very easy to stick with, something that's meets your either political beliefs or views, and only listen to that side. The problem with that is it's you can
Slanted.
easily get manipulated. Yes, I mean
Yeah.
the narrower your news source, the more likely are that you are manipulated by it. Um, you know the it's great. I mean, we knew that from because from the data that we had and how we would target that because we knew that the readers of our piece had a certain view that we would pander to, but that means then that um, you would have to means that then any bias that we wanted, not we, I keep saying we, but I have to say I was there, I was part of it, I made the stuff. Um, but any bias that was wanted, we, want to push from an advertiser, a large advertiser would come and they would want to promote something. A good example would be, there was a big movie release. We used to make so-called independent-looking um, websites or blogs because of our designers and team. They would make three or four of them. They would look slightly amateurish, so that it looked like they were made by just some independent guy in there, you know. And they would write a piece saying, "Oh, how great this movie was." And at the time, there wasn't that we could flood the 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 media outlets with everyone saying, "Oh wow, the big buzz on this particular movie release," because look at all these different independent people who saw the movie and loved it, to try and influence people go and to see the movie.
So
So
we're talking about the real fake news.
yes, yeah, it was. That's um, the reality is that if yeah, to be influenced, or news pieces that are coming out there that pushing a particular agenda, um, you would have to really dive deep to know what is the true source of that, where that piece was written. Um, the um, yeah, it's um, yeah, I'm trying to
W-
choose my words here, but it is a, a lot of pieces are written are we there was we would generate a piece, um, and make it look like it came from multiple sources. Make it, have multiple sources that we could feed that into, and then and generate it so that it looked like, wow, a lot of people are having these views, and where in reality they all came from one source and were just being fed out. So and unfortunately, that's just the way that it is. At least today, that influence is that there are. It's much easier for an independent to put out their own pieces. I mean, that's what, everyone now has a phone and they can go out there and shoot their own pieces. That's why it is much harder to, where back in the day when less people had that, you didn't have that kind of access to that. It was much easier to put out a piece. So it isn't really people thinking, oh well, back in the day it was much better and easier. It actually wasn't. At least today you have that opportunity to find real news done by independents who aren't influenced. It is hard because a lot of them can look like they look real, look independent, but they're not. But they're ground news. I think is one of the best places to kind of look. They have a very good service.
Can you
That's
can you repeat that, please?
yeah, ground news. They're
Ground news.
yeah, ground. Yeah, the news. They kind of are a conglomerate. They take any news piece and they work to display who is behind that particular piece. So to the left or to the right or center, any news piece. So when you read that piece, they say, well, this comes from this organization and their leanings are this way or that. And so you kind of see the full picture. You're reading it from all sides, and therefore then you can make a much better judgment on because the truth is out, it is in there. It's just, you take the slant from left to the right and to the center, and then you can make your mind up on what is actually what the a piece that they all agree on. That's more likely to be the actual truth of what's happened. So
Clylock
yeah.
is back with another question.
Mhm.
Journalists like Johnny Harris that have gone independent are probably the way to go? Yes or no?
it as I said, it's hard because the to make money from it, and people, that because we live in a society where you're where um you know the Western consumerism world that we're in, it is difficult to do. It's difficult um to make a living from it. So yes, ideally to be independent, and so that you can be, but how can to be truly independent is so therefore not take any advertising, difficult thing to do, not to be take any sponsorship, all of those things are, it's very difficult to do unless you're independently wealthy, that can therefore afford to not to do that, or because it's difficult when you're having to accept advertising, and a certain advertiser is paying so much to advertise on your channel, to sponsor you. It's difficult to not be have that influence on actually what you write or what you cover. um,
Well, one of the things that we have going on in the United States right now is that we have minority newscasters that have been fired um, because I can't really speak to why they were fired. But anyway, I lift up um, Roland Martin and Don Lemon, who are providing their own content, and they are, um, for all intents and purposes, asking for donations or membership for their YouTube audience to um, support their content. And I was wondering, do you think that that might be a way for more people to start being able to share their news?
yes, I mean independent, but as long as um, unless all the donations are totally anonymous, so that you're not influenced by someone putting in a a large donation to you, and if you knew who that was and what their politics were, that you weren't influenced by that because that donation was so large that's helping you to funding you. So it is um, that is a way, but again, it's difficult unless you're um, because one other way that influence could be done by large corporates, to that they could donate, because it's minimal to them, that kind of level of donation to help support that, but that they're donating to have an influence. So you have to be very wary or be very open about, because most aren't. Most aren't. Um, um, there's a service called video news reporting, which is where you have a so-called independent person out there covering the news, um, but actually within some of the government things. I think the last one was with Bush, but actually there was this reporter, so-called independent, from Washington, the reporting on the news, and actually it was all propaganda. It was all she was paid for by Bush administration to, and that but that piece went out to 77 news networks, covered it fully, and it was broadcast. And it was only later, that was said, oh, that was wrong. They shouldn't have done it. But it's already done. It's already out there. People already were influenced by it and made decisions based on it. So, um, it's an unfortunate state of affairs we're in presently, but it's the only way kind of round it is where we used to be is kind of more local news, well, more because where you can have and see the because you're part of that local place, so you would know actually what happened and stuff that's on there. But it's yeah, unfortunately, because of the lack of you know to be for it to really work, it needs to be independently funded so that there isn't any bias in terms of the influence. Because as I said, it's not cheap. To do the level of investigative journalism is required is very, very expensive. And, so, they should be more, have to be more centrally kind of paid so there isn't an influence. But that's just not the way that it works today. So it's the way to get it rounded is, as I said, because everyone has a voice, and anyone can express that voice and using channels, whether it's X or on YouTube or on their own blog, and so it's about finding those voices. About there's enough of those out there that you can, you I suppose my biggest thing to say is don't just stick with those who have the same beliefs as you. You've got to go, and I know it might be hard. I mean, I don't do it at all now. I just because I used to be a news junkie, but it's just so much more freeing when you just don't, and you have so much more time. You sleep so much better. You feel more connected with actually what it is there by not doing that, because you can't,
Oh Lord.
there isn't, unless you want to get into politics to influence it, there isn't, it's just designed to rile you. And it's not, it's just not good for your, it's better not to. It's literally,
So
it's
you
better
you
to
are
switch off.
saying that our health uh, is being impacted by the content that we're getting from the news?
Negativity, the negativity that's out there, because negativity sells. It's not good news doesn't sell. There's the negative news that isn't isn't a positive thing for us, for you. It's, well, I know just from people, just from personal experience, me cutting myself off from that kind of constant, you know being plugged into the latest thing. It just isn't. I'm much healthier, happier, and have much better time because by not, it's not that I'm totally cut off from it. That I'm aware of what is actually happening, but I don't. Um, I suppose because I know how it's made and how difficult it is to actually, sift through all of this stuff to find the actual news parts on there. It's better to be spend more time just generating your own good news or generating your own thing, or
Okay. So
spend the time, go visit your neighbor and talk with them or help someone. It's a much better use of your time and energy, and you will feel so much better for it.
Lilac Lopez Waterman is back again. You said we should concentrate on creating media. Why?
The more that we just it presently, the as I said, it's six corporations control 90% of the news feed that's out there. There is a growing market of where people are getting more news or getting their feeds from, you know, um, people are online or influencers or what's called, so who aren't affiliated with any news organizations. The more that we independently put out just what's happening or what we're doing, the more then that filters down and dilutes the very negative stuff, whether it's to one side or the other, because it's where the real kind of peace comes out by reliant of being totally reliant on being fed. It means then that you can be fed one way or another, but by being open and out and putting your own stuff out there, one, you kind of get an understanding of just, it's just a um, understanding of how it's made or how difficult or easy it is, or, but also it just puts out, you put out a piece that you've done or something you've seen, you share that with your family and friends, influence. It just makes, it helps to dilute the toxic stuff that's out there by more independent people just putting out and writing up their own pieces and putting it out. The way that um, um, the kind of, I suppose, the algorithm works in terms of wanting to, because most of the algorithms that are out there for where your feed. I mean, my only so the only social channel that I follow outside of work. Obviously, for my work, I've got to be on all of them, but that's for work, and that's very much a thing that I could switch on for work and turn off because I'm not on, you know, things like even like LinkedIn. I'm hardly on LinkedIn. That's the only one I'm partly on, but I don't publish anything or post anything on there because LinkedIn has now become just like any other social media channel, just like Facebook to me now it is. The way that all of those come, because that's the way that they all kind of come down to this lowest common denominator to make their revenue on. So yeah, it's better to me not being. I'm not actually kind of on there because I suppose, as I said before, I know how it's made. I make a lot of it to put out to there, so I don't consume it. Um, but it's better for you as just to write your own piece, put up your own thing, and just put that out there. The more people that do that, the more the real kind of stories kind of will get found at and seen because they're locally being done, um, and that's how. So that's if you want to be part of this news cycle.
Okay, sir.
I would
We're going
recommend
to
doing
switch
it.
gears a little bit. We have a question from Lois Richter of Davis, California.
Mm.
If one wants to generate positive messages, how do we get that message to people if, as you say, negativity sells?
The way that you do it, would you would just publish it to send it to friends and family and encourage them to send it on to their friends and family, because the positive energy from things like that, if more of those pieces were done, then people would have less time to read the negative parts on it because it's much more fulfilling, enlightening to read a piece from someone that or closely, and seeing what they're doing is much people do find that much more engaging to kind of read or to see, and it might only be your small circle or that small niche that would grow that goes to, but it does make a big difference. The more you do that, the more you write those pieces out to share with family and friends and encourage them to share it with family and friends. It doesn't take, we are all in control of our own, um, of, we're the, we are the,
We're
but
our
us
own
consult, yeah,
stewards?
yes, we are, yes, and
Yes.
so it's up to us as individuals to kind of do that, to do those pieces. I mean, I know I'm doing my small piece to kind of temper that by me recording when I go to the beach and I swim. So I know the views are small. I know I can actually influence them and do some very big views. I did that for a few videos where I got 14,000 views or something like that by using my skill set to kind of doing that. But that's time and thing. It's just not, it's just, um, yeah, just as I said, just spread it to family and
You're
friends and
marketing
encourage them to do it. And that.
to
Yes.
genuine audience, and you want authentic responses from them.
Yes,
Um,
yes, and it
so,
would
cl-
and it would it will organically grow because those pieces are just much more engaging to read. A real piece from someone you know or
uplifting.
friend of a friend, and more uplifting, and that it's that's what I would that's how I would encourage to. I said to dilute the toxicity that's out there on both the left and the
And
right.
I want to thank Lois Richter and Clara Lopez Waterman for their questions. I would also encourage, time is running out, and I would encourage those who are listening, please ask your questions before this hour is up. Clarlock is back again, and he says, it seems that the news and the media is going through a slump in no small part due to social media and YouTube. Don't you think that there is pressure being put on the traditional media outlets?
There is, they are seeing that because the growth of influencers being the only source of news for something that presently something like 12% people own their only news feed is from online influencers. So and that's just growing. Um, so yes, they are seeing that, but the way that they're combating it is by being even more sensationalized, which is a terrible spiral downwards kind of thing that's going. What eventually happens is that the it's people switch off. You will eventually that some take some longer than others, but you eventually switch off from that. And as I said, I encourage you to switch off from that. There is and to focus on, as I said, finding more positive local things that you can either have an influence in or write about yourself. It's that's the way that's the only way really for it, and it will come. It will happen because, as I said, there is a level. There is soon that you just come so much that you kind of switch off from it, and so and we will whether we actually get back to it being um, less negative and stuff that's out there, and we're being, but we have the influence on that. Is because it's only through us consuming it, and therefore then the advertisers and then respond to that, and so therefore we consume more on the advertising. We are in control of it by us not buying those newspapers or not subscribing to those feeds or not watching those channels. Will it change? It's because it's all down to us. We're being fed because we want to we want to eat that. If we stop eating it, then we won't be. That's the only way to change it. So I encourage you all to kind of switch off from those outlets and focus on just what you can influence and do locally. Because the more of us that do that, the more we will see that change, and the more it will be more positivity that's in there. That's my belief, anyway. Maybe again, it's a it's a dream, but
Let me
that's
ask you this. So, news, regular television news, newspapers, you have spoken for all intents and purposes saying that we are being marketed to.
mm,
And I want to know, is there a difference between the marketing that exists in the news and the television news programs versus articles that may appear in magazines?
I wish I'd say yes, but it depends on the organisations behind that. So when when I was in the field and producing this, we would not just produce, you know, it would be news magazines. You would be surprised when you look into a number of what the publications are or the organisations are to see actually what they're owned by. As I said, 90% of all of this is owned by six corporations. So you know, it is just a lot of times it's just repackaged just in a different way for that different medium, and it's still the same. It's the same organization that's behind those pieces. So I encourage you to either look for that 10% that isn't part of that, or ideally, I actually encourage you to make your own. But it is, I wish I could say yes, it is slightly different, but I'm not. It's not. As I said, it's there are so few that control those mediums because they, as I said, they don't make money. So 70% of their revenues to come from advertising. So they have to be influenced and stuff by that. It's prohibitively expensive to kind of do that and to expect to make a profit from it. It just isn't. It's just not possible. So they're used as marketing pieces rather than what you would hope to be independent news pieces. Those are, you said, 1 in 10 of what is out there is that.
I'm going to tell you that there is a certain amount of, I think, fear and anger that I'm experiencing as you talk about this, you know, and so I'm hearing in my ears that when we think about politics and things that are important to the general public, if there is an internal marketing that goes on in terms of what we hear and see in this digital age, then the argument that we are being marketed to by other countries sort of pops up in this kind of
Yeah.
idea that all of it is marketing.
Mm.
And so it doesn't matter. It's just about whatever agenda particular individuals have.
Yeah. I mean,
Am I kind of off track with that, or?
no, no, not at all. I mean, you know, there was a very big piece, you know, case as you know, within what Facebook had a number of years ago in terms of one of the big marketers kind of, you know, took all of that Facebook feed and and um, generated content, you know, highly targeted because Facebook it can be very highly targeted to produce that, and the problem with that is that that can then be taken over by um, um, uh, countries, you know, that could put that influence out under there because it's not difficult to make. So they were making news pieces to rile certain groups, certain um, to believing, wow, you know, this is such a terrible thing to happen, to actually cause more disrupt. And we you kind of see it with some protests and stuff that are out there. They can be fired up by that, and they're deliberately being fired up or deliberately being, you know, influenced to cause that level of disruption because it's, you know, it's a plus
You're
to a
being kind. It sounds like we're being manipulated. Period. I
we are
mean,
totally. I mean, you totally are, and it's whether it's just what level of manipulation there is that you're having out there. That's why I said it's it's so much healthier just to cut yourself off from it and only follow the friends or family in terms of what they're doing, because
so
one,
Lois is pushing
it's
back.
mhm,
Lois Richter is pushing back. She
mhm.
says, if we switch off, won't the remaining and remaining is in very large letters. Readers determine the tone and content. That is, if I am not there, why should they have any reason to produce something that I might like?
They have no reason to produce something that you might like because it's the reason that what's being produced is to, as I said, this is very expensive to produce. And so they have to produce something that's going to influence you to buy a product that they have associated with it or that there is actually market promoting. So, don't think that they're not in it. Unfortunately, they're not in it to produce something for you to like. They're in it to produce something for you to either purchase something or to have it's all down to or to have an influence so that something gets done or gets moved in a way in a direction that they want to go to.
Wow.
The majority of it is really more down to it's a piece to put that seed into you so when you're making your next purchase you're more likely to buy this brand than that one. That's the majority of it. But sometimes, when especially again it gets into the political field or when the political there's a big political change about to come, whether it's every 5 years or whatever it is in your particular region, that's then when it becomes a lot more insidious because it's all about then trying to get influence you to vote in one particular way to get one organization in. And the reason that that organization is getting in there because they're being lobbied by, again, the corporates to follow an agenda for them to help them sell more of their product. That's just the cycle it's been, and it's been that way since news kind of started. It's always been that way. It's just that we are, um, um, big. So it's by what I would encourage is for you to influence your circle of friends around you and encourage them to do the same. That's the way. That's the way to get round that, and not to follow it because it's not going to. That's the way when we are being fed this because we consume it. We want to consume it, and it's all down to us. The reason we're in this state is it's down to us doing it and us turning onto it and us forwarding on those pieces to others and saying, "Oh, isn't this terrible?" or "Isn't this?" And that's we are causing it. If we change, we encourage others to change. I would encourage you, Los, to be like on the rundown, and those are the things. Those are the programs. Programs like this are much better for you to consume and to spread on and to pass on to others. That's the way. That's the only way that this will change. We have to change our behavior and not consume this because it is not good for you. It truly isn't good for you. You will sleep better, you will be healthier by turning off from that and encourage you to make your own or to be something good or positive or to help those who you can around you. Because if everybody did that, we would have it would just be a lot nicer place and you would be a lot healthier and feel better for it.
Well, thank you, Ken Jordan, for being here tonight. We do have two more questions. And the next question is what's next for Ken Jordan? But before you answer that, can you share again the news source that you mentioned, Ground? Is that ground.com or?
Uh, I will. It's ground news. I would need to. I don't actually. I don't actually subscribe to it directly myself, but I know I've looked into it and seeing of all the ones. It's produced by. She used to work at NASA, um, and but it's of all of those, it is the one that would be if you were
We
like
will,
me and was a news junkie, then
yeah.
and you can't take that out. You have to have your feed, like I used to be. It would be it's that would be the one place then if you are going to do it and consume it would be going would be finding it there. yeah, it's ground news, and I'll, if I quickly look it up and see and give you the direct thing
Okay.
from it.
The next question is, what's next for Ken Jordan?
Um, well, for me, yeah, it's grounds dot news is the
Okay.
is the place. Yeah, ground dot news. So GROUND dot news. If you're if you can't yeah, come off that feed, then at least I encourage you to at least to look at that, to go there. Um, what's next for me is um, is more AI for me in my work. Um, the latest, which actually does feed into, it actually feeds into a lot of the stuff that's happening, because I'm producing a lot more um, AI related content, using VO3 is the latest one. The quality of its video output on there is great, and so I'm hopefully, I'm not sure when, they will be producing a service to help anyone to be able to build their own website. It's going to be large part of it is going to be a free service, so that everyone can kind of benefit from it. But I'm still quite a bit of a way behind doing and
Well,
building.
don't worry. I'm going to remind you. I'm going to remind you because I have quite a few people that I've already mentioned to them what you had shared earlier about this effort to be able to create their own websites. And I'm just going to quickly share. This is the ground website that Ken mentioned. Okay. Okay. I just wanted to share that.
Mm.
And the last question is, um, you're speaking to the world. What do you want the world to know?
Okay, again, I'm going to repeat. I want you to start, because I know it's difficult to kind of, but to start by think, rather than being a consumer of media, to be a creator of media. So I want to encourage you, but start small in your own way, but just start to move that needle, move that weight from less consumption and more creation. I think if more people did that, the tools that are out there to help you to do that are getting easier and stuff to do. And I promise you, truly do promise you, from being someone who's been on the inside and been creating this and being one of the largest consumers of this, by becoming more of a creator rather than consumer of this, of media, you will feel better, and it will be much more fulfilling, for you and those around you. That's my sermon for today.
Well, thank you, Ken Jordan, so much for being here with me today. And I want to speak to the audience that's watching right now. If you like content like this, we ask that you support Conversation with Tony Mobley so we can have great guests like Ken Jordan. Um, this is a little bit out of the norm for me to speak this way, but we want to continue to share content like this. We want to continue to share stories, have conversations with real people. I'm really excited about the guests that are coming up soon. Over the next 6 weeks, we've already locked in several guests for the next 6 weeks. I think you will really, really enjoy. So I'm going to ask that please like and subscribe. Share what we talk about here on Conversation with Tony Mobley. And that's my little sermon for today. Conversation with Tony Mobley is produced by Value Audiovisual Professionals who meet daily in office hours global, hosted by Alex Lindsay. We want to say thank you to Mimo Live. We have great conversations with real people. Stay tuned for new episodes and great conversations on Conversation with Tony Mobley. And we ask if you have time, go back, look at some of the past conversations. We think that you will find something that you like and hopefully that is helpful to you. Conversation with Tony Mobley wants to thank Mr. Ken Jordan for being a part of our conversation today, for doing the work you do, and for being the person who you are. Thank you, Ken Jordan, for all that you do. Again, if you like Conversation with Tony Mobley, we ask that you like and subscribe on YouTube. Feel free to go to our website. There you can see an opportunity to support Conversation with Tony Mobley by being able to donate to Conversations with Tony Mobley. You heard from Ken tonight that in order to produce media, sometimes people have to, for lack of a better word, sell their souls to create content. And we are totally independent. We are supported by a few individuals who have decided that they wanted to support me in producing Conversations with Tony Mobley, Ken being one of them. And so we thank you for this opportunity. I'm excited that we had this conversation tonight. And I'm excited that Ken was able to share his experience with us tonight. And with that, we're going to say good night. We are going to have next week, we're going to have the creator of the CEO of SPX Graphics on Conversation with Tony Mobley next week. And his name is Tuomo. And I'm going to be transparent and say I can't pronounce his last name at the moment, but I guarantee you in the coming media that you announcements that you will hear about our conversation that I will pronounce his name correctly. But SPX is a graphic interface that you can use in Zoom. It's a Zoom app. And what you can do with it, you can bring in lower thirds. You can bring in all kinds of animations in terms of, if Ken and I were just having a conversation, there's amazing things that I will do, that I can do. And so we're going to have Tuomo on next week. He is coming in from Europe, and we know that it's a different time frame for those guests that are coming in from Europe, as Ken is coming in from Ireland. And so we want to say thank you to Ken Jordan again. We want to thank all of you for joining us today on Conversation with Tony Mobley. Take care, good night, and God bless.